I work nights in a cafeteria at a college in Texas. That probably doesn't sound like much of a story, but if you knew what I've seen, what I've served, you wouldn't be sitting here so calmly. I'm only telling you this because I can't keep it in anymore. The things that come through those cafeteria doors, and not students. At least, not anymore. The college looks normal in the daylight. A red brick campus, flat stretches of road, football. Banners on poles, that hot Texas sky stretched so wide you almost forget how small you are under it. But come midnight, when most of the lights cut out and the cicadas go silent, the place doesn't feel like a campus anymore. It feels like a holding ground. The cafeteria is where it happens. Always the cafeteria. I used to think working there was just another job. Easy money for a guy who'd burned through his savings and didn't want. Questions about his past. You clean trays, mop up soda spills, fry burgers for students pulling all-nighters. That's what they told me when I signed up. That's what I believed for about 2 nights. It was my 3rd shift when I noticed the first wrong thing. The cafeteria itself is a long, rectangular building on the east side of campus, near the dorms. Tall glass windows line the front, so you can see right inside, even from the courtyard. At night, though, with most of the campus dark, those windows turn black. You can see out, but it feels like something out there is staring back. The shift is simple. Doors unlock at 11 p.m. for late night dining, close again at 3 a.m. It's mostly stressed out students, kids with laptops, slumped shoulders, sweatshirts that haven't been washed in weeks. They order fries, coffee, maybe a breakfast taco if they're lucky. By 2:30, it's usually dead. But that night, my 3rd night, the doors opened and someone walked in who didn't look like a student. He was tall, too tall. His head nearly brushed the top of the frame, and when the fluorescent light hit his face, I realized something was off about his skin. It wasn't the right texture. Too smooth, too pale, like clay that hadn't been fired yet. He wore a hoodie like the others, but it hung strangely, stretched too tight at the shoulders, sagging at the waist. I glanced at the other worker that night, an older woman named Carla who handled the register. She didn't blink, didn't even glance at him. "Next," she said, like he was just another kid in line. He stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice didn't match his mouth. It was flat, like words were being dropped into the air rather than pushed out of lungs. "Toffee," he said. I poured it, hands shaking. His fingers were long, longer than mine by a stretch, and when he wrapped them around the paper cup, I swear I heard the styrofoam squeal like it was being crushed, though it didn't collapse. He walked to a corner booth, sat down, stared at nothing. No one else in the cafeteria looked at him. Not a single student turned their head. That was the first night I realized something was wrong. I didn't sleep when I got home. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured his hands around that cup. Those strange pale knuckles bending in ways they shouldn't. The next night, he wasn't there. But 2 others were. A boy and a girl, both wearing backpacks. Their faces were wrong too. Too smooth, too featureless. Like someone had tried to sculpt humans from memory and hadn't finished the details. They sat together, didn't eat, didn't speak, just watched the door. By the end of that week, I started noticing something worse: the cameras. There are black dome security cameras in every corner of the cafeteria. I never paid them much attention until I saw what they were actually recording. On the monitor in the back office, the things didn't look like people. They were taller, thinner, shadows pulled into the shape of students. Their mouths were too wide, their hands hung too low. On the screen, you could see what they really were. Even if to the naked eye they blended right in. I asked Carla about it once, trying to keep my voice light. The first week was all unease. Strange faces, strange silences. The way the cafeteria seemed to breathe on its own after midnight. But the second week, that's when the rules started to reveal themselves. Rules no one had written down, but I learned them the hard way. The first rule, never stand too close to the windows after midnight. That lesson came on a Tuesday. It was one of those dead nights, barely any students, just the hum of the soda fountain and the flicker of an overhead bulb that was about to burn out. I leaned against the glass, half asleep, staring into the courtyard. The reflection showed me tired eyes, the fry station behind me, the emptiness of the room. But then the reflection changed. Behind me, in the glass, I saw people filling the tables. A dozen of them, silent, sitting, staring at me. But when I spun around, the cafeteria was empty. Empty except for Carla, who was wiping down the counter with a wet rag, humming some tuneless sound. I looked back at the window. The people were still there in the reflection. Closer. I jerked back, heart racing, and the reflection snapped to match reality again. Empty tables, no one there. That was the night I learned not to stand too close to the windows. The second rule, don't look at them too long. That was harder. I mean, how are you supposed to not look at something that's wrong? The tall one came back that Thursday. Same hoodie, same clay smooth face. He sat in the far booth again, ordered coffee again, and I couldn't stop staring at his hands. They didn't move naturally. Fingers twitched in little bursts like something inside was tugging them on strings. When he lifted the cup, his wrist bent too far, and I heard the tiniest crack, like a branch snapping, but he didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. I realized too late that I'd been staring for nearly a full minute. His head turned, slowly, mechanical, and though there were no real eyes, I felt the weight of his attention burn into me. My throat locked up, skin crawling. He kept looking at me until I forced myself to turn away. My hands shook so bad, I dropped the fryer basket back into the oil. The hiss of grease broke the silence, and when I looked back, he was staring at the wall again. Carla didn't notice a thing, or she pretended not to. That was the second rule. Don't look too long. Don't let them catch you watching. The third rule came from Carla herself. It was Friday night, and we were short-staffed, just the two of us. She was rolling silverware in napkins while I mopped the line. Out of nowhere, she muttered, "Don't open the door, no matter who knocks. You hear me?" I thought she was joking. Door's locked, right? She stopped rolling. Her hands froze on the napkin, and she finally looked at me with an expression that wasn't blank. It was fear. They'll knock like they're students. They'll say they left something inside. Doesn't matter what you hear. You don't open. I laughed, 'cause that's what you do when someone drops a crazy line on you out of nowhere. But she didn't laugh. She just went back to rolling silverware. Tighter this time. Her fingers white at the knuckles. I didn't believe her. Not until Sunday. It was 2:45 a.m., nearly closing time. The cafeteria was empty, except for one of them, sitting in the far booth, motionless as always. Carla was in the back office, counting money. That's when I heard it. A knock at the glass doors. 3 sharp raps. Human. Normal. I turned, mop in hand, and saw a girl outside. She looked maybe 19. Black hoodie, backpack slung over one shoulder. Her face looked real. Real enough. "Hey," she mouthed through the glass. Her voice was muffled, but I could hear it just enough. "I left my phone. Please, can I grab it?" I hesitated. She looked like a student. She even shifted her weight from foot to foot, the way people do when they're nervous. I was already reaching for the keys when Carla's voice cut through the intercom. "Don't," she said. Her voice was flat but trembling. "Step away from the door." I froze. The girl outside tilted her head, smiled just a little too wide, and then, without blinking, raised her hand. It wasn't a hand. Not anymore. It was long, thin, jointed wrong, like a spider's leg pressing against the glass. She dragged it down the door, nails screeching like metal. My stomach flipped. I stumbled back with the mop. She was still smiling when she turned and walked into the dark. I wanted to believe it was just a hallucination, some sleep-deprived vision. But when I turned back to the cafeteria, the booth in the corner was empty. The tall one was gone. I didn't see him leave. That was the night I knew Carla wasn't crazy. There were rules. I started keeping a mental list. No windows, no staring, don't open the door, and maybe most important, don't ask questions you don't want answered. But of course, I broke that one too. It was the next week, late Monday night. Only a handful of real students eating. 2 guys in sweatpants, a girl with headphones. I asked Carla why we stayed open so late when hardly anyone came in. She didn't answer at first. She just kept her eyes on the register, tapping the keys, even though no one was in line. Finally, she said, "We're not open for them." I frowned. For who then? Her lips pressed together, like she'd said too much. "Don't ask again," she whispered. That whisper carried more fear than anything I'd seen in her eyes. I wanted to push, to demand answers. But just then, the lights flickered. The soda fountain sputtered, like air was in the line. And every shadow in the cafeteria seemed to stretch longer than it should. And I realized, if she told me the truth, I might not survive knowing it. Still, the questions ate at me. Why here? Why us? Why the cafeteria? I didn't get answers that night, but I got something else. Something worse. At 3 a.m., just as we were locking up, I heard it again, the knocking. But this time, it wasn't at the front doors. It was behind me, coming from the freezer. The freezer door is heavy steel, built to keep in the cold. You don't expect to hear knocking from the other side of it, especially not at 3 in the morning, when the cafeteria is supposed to be empty. But I heard it. 3 knocks. Same rhythm as before. I froze mid-step. My first thought was Carla's messing with me. But when I turned, I saw her standing by the register, keys in hand, face pale as chalk. She wasn't moving. She wasn't even breathing. The knocking came again, louder this time. "Don't," she whispered, voice so thin I barely caught it. Don't touch that door. Her hands were trembling so badly the keys jingled. She set them down slow, like a noise might set something off. I stared at the freezer. The metal surface vibrated under the knocks. Then came a scrape, like nails or claws dragging down the steel. "Please," a voice called from inside. Muffled. Female. Human. "It's so cold. Please let me out." My stomach dropped. The voice was wrong. Too steady. Too calm for someone supposedly locked in a freezer. Carla shook her head violently, mouthing no, no, no. The voice kept begging. "I'm freezing. Please, please help me." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All I could think was, what if there really was someone inside? What if a student had gotten trapped? "Don't listen," Carla said, louder this time. Her fear cracked through the whisper. "It's not them." Then the freezer went silent. No knocking, no scraping, just the low hum of the compressor. Carla exhaled, shoulders sagging. She grabbed the keys again, fumbling for the lock at the front doors. "We're done," she muttered. "Go home, now." I should have left it at that. I should have grabbed my bag and walked out like she said. But when I looked back at the freezer, I noticed something that made my skin crawl worse than the voice. Frost had spread across the metal handle. Not just frost. Handprints. 5 long, thin prints, stretched wider than a human's, pressed into the steel, like someone had tried to claw their way out. I didn't sleep that morning. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the voice again, calm, steady, almost mocking. "Please let me out." The next night, Carla wasn't there. Her register station sat empty when I clocked in. The manager, a guy named Paul, who I'd only ever seen during the day, told me she'd taken time off. His tone didn't invite questions. That left me working with 2 other students, both younger, both clueless. Neither of them had been around long enough to know the rules. I kept looking for the tall one in the hoodie, or the smooth-faced girl. But that night, the cafeteria felt different. Too quiet. Even the soda fountain didn't hum the way it usually did. Around midnight, the first wrong customer walked in. It wasn't one of the tall ones. It looked normal, at first. A boy in a red cap, carrying a backpack, ordering fries. His voice came out fine. His face looked fine, but when he smiled at me, his teeth were all the same size. Perfectly flat, perfectly square. Dozens of them, lined edge to edge like a row of keys. I nearly dropped the basket into the fryer. He didn't notice, just paid, sat at a table, and stared at nothing. The student workers didn't say a word, didn't even look at him. By 1 a.m., more of them had trickled in. Faces too smooth, mouths too wide. One of them walked past me close enough that I smelled it. Their skin. It wasn't sweat, wasn't deodorant. It smelled like clay left in the rain. Damp, earthy, sour. I fought the urge to gag. Then, just as I thought I couldn't take it anymore, something stranger happened. The real students started leaving. One by one, they packed up their laptops, their notebooks, their trays, and walked out. Not a word. By 1:45, it was just me, the 2 student workers, and a cafeteria full of them. The wrong ones. They didn't eat. They didn't drink. They just sat, waiting. I kept my head down, scrubbing trays that didn't need scrubbing. My nerves were shot, every sound magnified. The squeak of shoes, the buzz of a fly against the lights. I wanted to bolt for the door, but my legs wouldn't move. That's when I noticed the 2 student workers weren't moving either. Both of them just stopped. One with his hand on a stack of plates, the other holding a mop. Frozen, their eyes wide open, staring straight ahead. I whispered their names. No response. Then, in perfect unison, they turned their heads toward me. My stomach twisted. Their pupils had stretched. Not circles anymore. Slits. Thin vertical slits, like a cat's. One of them spoke, but it wasn't his voice. It was flat, mechanical, too loud in the empty room. "You see us." My throat locked. The other student said, "You hear us." Every creature in the cafeteria turned toward me at once. Dozens of faces, blank and wrong, tilting in my direction. I stumbled backward, knocking into a chair. My mind screamed, "Run!" but my legs were lead. "You stay," the first one said. "You feed," the other added. And both of them smiled with those flat, square teeth. The tall one stood, hoodie stretching too tight across his shoulders. His long fingers tapped against the table, making a sound like bones on glass. I thought I was gonna die right there, crushed under the weight of whatever they were. But then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The lights flickered, and in that split second of darkness, everything reset. The student workers blinked, groaned, rubbed their eyes. "Damn, I need coffee," one of them muttered. Like nothing had happened. The cafeteria was empty again. All of them gone. I stood there shaking, mop still clutched in my hands, wondering if I'd finally lost it. But then I looked down. On the tile floor, leading from the booth to the door, were wet footprints. Too long, too thin, bare. They hadn't disappeared completely. They'd only left, and I had the sickening feeling they'd be back. I stopped trusting the shifts after that night. Stopped trusting the walls, the windows, even the clock above the fryer. Everything felt staged, like the cafeteria was just a set, and I was the only one who hadn't been told my lines. I thought about quitting. God knows I wanted to. But the thing is, you don't just quit. You don't walk out of a place like that and pretend it never happened. Something follows you. I could feel it. The idea of leaving scared me worse than staying, so I stayed. The next week, the freezer called again. It was Tuesday, 2 a.m. The floor was sticky with spilled soda, the fry oil smelled burned, and the place was almost empty. Just 3 real students, scattered and silent. The hum of the freezer was steady, low, almost like breathing. Then came the knock. This time, 5 slow taps, deliberate. I froze. My mop handle pressed so tight in my grip, my knuckles ached. Then came the voice again. A man's this time. Deep. Calm. "Please. It's cold. I can't feel my hands. Please, let me out." I turned toward the register. A new girl was working. Some sophomore with earbuds, scrolling her phone. She didn't hear a thing. The voice in the freezer shifted. Softer. Urgent. "Help me. Don't let me die in here." I took a step closer. I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted proof. Maybe because some part of me still believed it could be real. I leaned close, my ear almost against the steel. That's when the voice changed. It wasn't begging anymore. It was whispering, low, precise, like it knew me. "Mark!" My stomach turned to ice. It knew my name. "Open!" it hissed. "We're hungry." I stumbled back, slammed into a stack of trays. They clattered loud enough to make the sophomore look up from her phone. "You good, dude?" she asked. I nodded too fast. My heart was in my throat. The freezer went silent again, but I swear I felt something inside shift, like something pressing against the other side of the door, waiting for me to come closer. After that, I started noticing other things. Little things, but worse for being little. The food went bad faster. Meat spoiled overnight, bread molded in hours. We'd unload crates from the truck in the evening, and by midnight, half of it was sour. The soda fountain poured thick, brown liquid that tasted faintly metallic, like blood watered down. And the smells? God, the smells. The cafeteria had always carried that greasy perfume of fries and tacos. But after midnight, it soured. The air grew heavy, damp, like wet soil mixed with copper. One night, I walked into the kitchen and found the floor wet with something dark. Not water, not grease. I bent down and touched it before I could think better. It wasn't liquid at all. It was thick, stringy, almost like muscle fibers. By the time I grabbed a rag to wipe it up, it was gone. The students, the real ones, started noticing too. Not the creatures, not the freezer. But they noticed the cafeteria itself. "Food tastes weird tonight," one said. "Is it just me, or does it smell like dirt in here?" another muttered. But they kept coming. Midnight cravings, stress, desperation, whatever it was, it drew them in. And the wrong ones blended in easier every night. Sometimes I couldn't tell the difference until it was too late. Like Thursday night, a girl in a hoodie came up to the counter. Her hair hung over her face, her voice muffled. "Fries," she said. I dropped a basket in the oil, handed her a tray, and when she reached for it, her sleeve slipped back. Her wrist bent backward, completely. The tray tilted, the fries slid off, but she didn't flinch. She just bent her arm back into place and walked away. No one else noticed. I wanted to scream, to throw down my apron and bolt into the night, but I didn't. Because that would have meant drawing attention to myself. And if there's one thing I'd learned, it's that they don't like attention. Carla came back that weekend. She looked worse, pale, eyes sunken, hair pulled back tight, but she looked at me differently, like I'd crossed some threshold. "You heard it, didn't you?" she asked when we were alone in the kitchen. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. "Freezer's the worst of it," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. That's where they keep the ones that don't blend right. They call, they beg, but it's not them. I swallowed hard. "Then who?" She cut me off sharp. "Don't ask. You don't want to know." I hated her for that answer. Hated the way she locked away whatever knowledge she had, leaving me to guess at the rest. But the truth is, I already knew. They weren't begging to be let out. They were baiting, and sooner or later, someone would take the bait. That night, I came closer than I ever should have. It was 2:30, almost closing. The cafeteria was empty. Carla was counting cash. I was wiping down tables, trying not to glance at the booth where the tall one usually sat. Then I heard it. Not knocking this time. Scratching. Soft. Constant. Like claws dragging across the inside of the freezer. I couldn't stop myself. I walked closer. One step. Another. My hand hovered inches from the handle. The metal was cold enough to burn. Frost crept over the steel, and for a second, I swear, I saw a shadow move behind the tiny slit of glass in the door. Then, The scratching stopped, and a voice whispered right against the glass. Open. Not loud, not begging, just a command. I stumbled back so fast, I slipped on the wet tile and hit the ground hard. Carla came rushing in, saw me on the floor, and her face drained of color. "You almost did it," she hissed. I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. My hand had been right there. If I had opened that door, I don't think I'd be here telling you this now. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. The freezer wasn't just holding them in, it was calling me. Every night, a little stronger. Every night, a little closer. And I didn't know how much longer I could resist. After that night, I started keeping my distance from the freezer. I mopped around it without looking, took the long way through the kitchen, even if it meant weaving between carts of dirty trays. But avoiding it didn't help. The coaling didn't stop. It started slipping into the rest of the cafeteria. Sometimes I'd hear it faintly under the hiss of the fryer, or woven into the hum of the soda fountain. Not words anymore, just sounds. A cadence, like someone breathing against the back of my neck. I told myself I was imagining it. Lack of sleep, grease fumes getting into my head. But then, one night, Carla caught me staring too long at the freezer door and said, "Don't give them what they want." She said it like she knew exactly what was happening in my head. That's when I realized it wasn't just me. The shift that broke me started out normal. Well, normal for that place. Friday night, midnight. A crowd of real students came through first, tired, hungry, mumbling about finals. But as the hour dragged on, the others began to filter in. You know how you can tell when a place gets crowded? The volume rises, the air warms with body heat, you can feel the mass of people around you. But when they came, it was the opposite. The cafeteria got colder. The air went still. They filled the booths in silence. Two smooth faces, two tall frames, too many teeth. Every one of them pretending to be human, but only in the broadest strokes. One of them, shorter than the rest, wearing a baseball cap, stood right at the edge of the counter. Just stood there. Didn't order. Didn't move. Just stared. I busied myself with trays. Pretended not to notice. My throat was so dry I could barely swallow. Finally, he leaned forward. His lips didn't move, but I heard it anyway, right in my ear. Hungry. I nearly dropped the tray. When I blinked, he was already walking away, sliding into a booth with the others. Carla avoided looking at them. She kept her eyes on the register, punching buttons no one had pressed. Her hands were shaking. I realized then she wasn't in control of any of this. She was just surviving, same as me. Around 1 a.m., the cafeteria emptied of real students again. Just me, Carla, and them. The tall one stood. His hoodie sagged, his fingers brushing the table like insect legs. He tapped once, and the others followed. Dozens of heads turning in unison, faces tilted toward me. I froze mid-step, mop dripping onto the tiles. Then they started to move, not toward the exit, toward me. Slow at first, deliberate. Carla's voice broke sharp across the silence. "Back room, now." I didn't hesitate. I dropped the mop and bolted for the kitchen. She slammed the door behind us, twisted the lock. For a moment, all I heard was my own pulse hammering in my ears. Then the sound began. knuckles against the door. Slow, rhythmic. Carla grabbed my arm, pulled me deeper into the kitchen. She didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Her face was pale as the frost creeping across the steel hinges. The knocking stopped. We waited. Minutes dragged, stretching like hours. Finally, she whispered, "They won't come back tonight. Not like that." I didn't ask how she knew. When I finally made it home at dawn, I locked my apartment door 3 times and shoved a chair under the knob. I thought I was safe. But that was the first morning I dreamed of the cafeteria. In the dream, I stood in the middle of the dining hall. The tables stretched out too far, rows of booths disappearing into the dark. Every seat was full. Dozens, hundreds of them, too many to count. Every head turned toward me, every mouth opened wide. And the sound that came out wasn't a scream. It was a single word, a command. Feed. I woke up choking, heart hammering, the smell of wet clay still in my nose. The dreams didn't stop. Some nights it was the freezer, me standing with my hand on the handle, frost biting my fingers, a voice whispering, "Open." Other nights, it was the cafeteria. Endless rows of wrong faces staring until I couldn't breathe. I stopped sleeping more than an hour at a time. But here's the worst part. The dreams started to bleed into waking life. I'd be serving fries, and the faces across the counter would blur smooth for a split second. I'd blink, and they'd look normal again. I'd pour coffee and the liquid would thicken in the cup, dark and clotted. Then clear again when I looked twice, and every night the freezer whispered louder. One night, I broke. It was near 3 a.m., closing time. The cafeteria was empty. Carla had left early, claiming she felt sick. I was alone, mopping in silence. The freezer hummed, louder. Then the knocking came, not from inside this time. From the walls, from the floor, from everywhere. My vision swam, my chest tightened. I dropped the mop and stumbled toward the freezer, hand shaking as it reached for the handle. The cold burned my palm. Frost crept up my wrist. "Feed," the voice whispered. Dozens of voices now, male, female, children, all overlapping. "Feed, seed, feed." I pulled. The latch clicked. And then, Carla's voice, behind me. "Don't." I spun. She wasn't there. Just the empty kitchen. But the sound of her voice jolted me. My hand snapped back. The door stayed shut. The freezer went silent. I collapsed against the counter, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. That was the night I realized the truth. They didn't just want to be let out. They wanted me to let them out. And every night, they were wearing me down. The next shift, I saw something worse than anything so far. I saw one of the students answer the call. A freshman, maybe 18, wearing headphones, came to grab a slice of pizza at 2:45. He looked exhausted, half asleep. I watched him wander into the kitchen, confused, mumbling something about looking for the bathroom. He stopped in front of the freezer, and he reached for the handle. The freshman's hand hovered over the freezer handle. His earbuds were still in, music faintly bleeding through. He didn't even look like he knew what he was doing. Eyes glazed, mouth slack, walking like a sleepwalker. I froze. My voice caught in my throat. If I shouted, would that draw them out? If I stayed silent, would he open the door? The metal handle frosted over as his fingers touched it. The hum of the freezer deepened, turning into something almost like a growl. I forced myself forward. My shoes squeaked on the wet tile. "Hey," I called, too sharp, too desperate. The freshman blinked, slow, like someone had just snapped him out of a trance. His hand dropped. He turned, confused. "Bathroom?" he muttered. "Not here," I said quickly, grabbing his shoulder, steering him away. "Out the hall. Other side." He yawned, nodded, shuffled out. The freezer door vibrated as soon as he was gone. Hard. The whole steel frame rattled in its hinges. Frost spread across the seams, cracking as it grew. Then the voices came again. "You stopped him. You keep us hungry. You will open." The voices weren't muffled anymore. They weren't inside the freezer. They were everywhere, crawling across the walls, down from the ceiling vents, whispering through the drains. I bolted out of the kitchen. Didn't even grab my bag. The next morning, I found Carla outside smoking a cigarette on the curb, even though I'd never seen her smoke before. Her hands shook as she lit it. "You heard them, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded. My throat was raw from lack of sleep, but I managed. They wanted him. Her eyes flicked to mine sharp. That's what they want. Always. Students, easy prey. I swallowed. Then why us? Why not take whoever they want? She inhaled smoke, exhaled slow, because the door keeps them in, and we keep the door shut. That's the job. I laughed. Too high, too brittle. That's the job? That's what I signed up for? You think they pay us $10 an hour to flip burgers? She snapped. Her face was pale, eyes bloodshot, but her voice carried a raw edge I hadn't heard before. We're not cooking for students. We're feeding them, keeping them calm. Keeping them from breaking through. Her words hit like ice water. You mean, I stammered, all this food, all these late night hours? It's not for us, she said flatly. It's for them. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My stomach churned as the smell of clay and copper rose in my memory. I wanted to run, quit, never come back. But Carla's next words nailed me in place. If you walk out, they'll follow. You think they don't know you by now? They do. They see you. Her cigarette shook between her fingers. She dropped it, crushed it under her shoe, and walked away without looking back. That was the night I realized quitting wasn't an option. It wasn't a job. It was a sentence. Things escalated fast after that. The wrong ones came earlier, not just after midnight. 10, 11, sometimes before the doors even officially unlocked. They filled booths, stood in corners, sat at tables with trays of untouched food. And the real students, fewer and fewer of them showed up. It was like word had spread, though no one said it outright. By the second week of December, most nights were nothing but them. The cafeteria wasn't a cafeteria anymore. It was theirs. I felt it in my bones every time I walked in. The air was colder, heavier. The shadows pooled in corners where no light could touch. The soda machine groaned like it was choking on something alive. And the freezer never stopped whispering. Sometimes it was begging, sometimes commanding. Sometimes it just laughed, low and wet, like something gargling blood. I started hearing it even outside of work, walking home, lying in bed, standing in the shower. A constant, faint murmur, like my own heartbeat, had been replaced with their voices. Carla looked worse every day. Gaunt, hollow. She muttered rules under her breath while she worked, like mantras. Don't look too long. Don't open the door. Don't answer when they knock. But she never told me the rule I needed most: how to make it stop. The worst night came 2 weeks before winter break. The cafeteria was empty, silent. Not even the hum of machines this time. Just silence so heavy it pressed on my chest. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would be a quiet shift. Then the lights cut out. All of them. Pitch black. The silence broke with dozens of footsteps. Shuffling. Slow. All around me. I couldn't see a thing. My breath came in sharp gasps, loud in the dark. My hand fumbled for my phone, for a flashlight, for anything. When the lights snapped back on, every booth was full. Dozens of them, faces tilted, smooth, wrong, grinning with too many teeth. I stumbled back, heart hammering. My legs barely worked. Then they spoke, all at once. Feed. The word hit like a physical blow. My knees buckled. I gripped the counter to stay upright. One of them stood, the tall one. His hoodie stretched, seams straining, skin rippling beneath like it didn't fit right. He stepped forward. Carla burst out of the kitchen, knife in hand. A long kitchen blade shining under the fluorescent lights. "Back off!" she shouted, her voice cracking. The tall one stopped. The others went still. Carla's chest heaved. Her knuckles whitened around the blade. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, one by one, they sat back down. The tall one last. The silence returned. Carla lowered the knife, trembling. She glanced at me, eyes wide, terrified. "They're testing us," she whispered. That was when I realized the truth. It wasn't just about keeping the freezer shut. It was about how long we could keep resisting. And the way Carla looked at me, I knew she didn't think we'd last much longer. After that night, Carla never let the knife out of reach. It was always in her apron, handle sticking out, ready. And she wasn't the only one changing. I caught myself doing things I swore I'd never do. Double-checking shadows, counting the booths before leaving, muttering rules in my head like they were prayers. Sometimes I'd wake up in my dorm and realize I'd been whispering them in my sleep. Don't look too long. Don't open the door. Don't answer when they knock. Like they were carving themselves into my brain. Finals week hit. Campus thinned out. Half the students left early, fleeing to their families, their warm houses, anywhere but here. But the cafeteria didn't empty. If anything, it filled more. They didn't even pretend to be students anymore. Hoodies gone, hats gone, just faces, pale and too smooth, eyes like holes punched in paper, and the smell, rotting leaves, wet earth, copper blood, hung everywhere. I couldn't taste food without gagging, couldn't breathe without wanting to claw my throat out. One night, I asked Carla the question I'd been avoiding since day one. Why don't they just kill us? She was sitting on the counter, knife in her lap. Her hair hung limp, her skin gray. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. "They don't want to," she said quietly. "Not yet." Her voice was flat, hollow, but her eyes flicked toward the freezer as she spoke. I followed her gaze. The steel door was slick with frost that pulsed like veins under skin. "They're waiting," she added. "For what?" She didn't answer. The next night, I almost broke. It was 2 a.m. The wrong ones filled the booths, whispering to each other in a language that scraped like knives across glass. Then the knocking started. Soft, rhythmic, not from the door, from underneath the floor. My stomach flipped. The tiles vibrated under my feet, each knock rattling up through my bones. Carla froze, eyes wide, knife in hand. The knocking grew louder, faster. "Don't answer," she hissed, her voice sharp and panicked. "Don't you dare." "I'm not," I snapped, though my legs twitched, like something inside me wanted to move toward it. The knocking stopped, and for a second, the silence was worse. Then, faint, from every booth at once, their voices came in unison. Hungry. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but my body locked. My throat seized. All I could do was stand there, shaking. Carla raised the knife, though what good it would do against dozens of them, I didn't know. Then, slowly, they all turned their heads. Not toward Carla, not toward the freezer, toward me. Their voices overlapped, layered, breaking language into something raw and inhuman. You. I staggered back, tripping over a chair. My palms hit the tile. Cold shot through me, like the floor wasn't stone but ice. Carla grabbed my arm, yanked me up, shoved me behind her. "Not tonight," she snapped at them. Her voice cracked, but it held. The booths went still, faces blank. And then, one by one, they turned back forward. The tension snapped like a rubber band. I collapsed against the counter, gasping, drenched in sweat. Carla didn't look at me. She just muttered, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "They're choosing." I thought about quitting again, thought about running, hopping on the first bus out of town, never looking back. But Carla's words gnawed at me. If you walk out, they'll follow. And after that night, I knew she wasn't bluffing. They weren't letting me go. Not until they got what they wanted. And more, I was afraid that what they wanted was me. The last night before winter break was when everything broke. Campus was dead. No students, no traffic, snow falling thick, covering the world in silence. Inside the cafeteria, it wasn't snow that covered the floor. It was frost, thick, white, creeping up the tables, curling across the windows. My breath came out in clouds. My hands stung, raw from the cold. Carla was already inside, standing by the freezer, knife drawn. The door wasn't just frosted over, it was bulging. The steel bent outward, like something inside was pushing. It wasn't humming anymore. It was roaring, low, guttural, shaking the walls, the ceiling, the lights. "They're done waiting," Carla whispered. Her voice trembled. The booths filled with wrong ones, but they weren't sitting anymore. They stood, lined the walls, formed a circle around us. My vision blurred. My ears rang. My body screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. The freezer door groaned. The hinges bent. Carla's hand shook on the knife. "Don't open it," I whispered, though I knew it wasn't us opening anymore. The door buckled. A crack split down the middle. Cold air blasted out, colder than anything I'd ever felt. My lungs seized. My skin burned, and through the widening crack, I saw it. Not a face, not a body, a shape. Vast, wrong. Something that didn't fit inside the geometry of the room. A mass of angles and flesh and endless teeth. The wrong ones dropped to their knees, heads bowed. whispering louder, faster, voices overlapping into one single word: seed. Carla screamed, raised the knife, and drove it into the freezer door. The lights shattered. The roar became a scream. And the last thing I remember was the cold swallowing me whole. I woke up in silence. Not the cafeteria silence I'd grown used to. The low hum, the scraping whispers, the faint knock under the tiles. This silence was total, crushing. I opened my eyes. The cafeteria was empty. No Carla. No booths filled with wrong ones. No freezer, no knife, not even the smell. Just me, standing in a room that shouldn't exist. The walls were white, smooth, and endless. The floor reflected like ice. There were no doors, no windows, no exits. Only one thing broke the emptiness: a chair. And sitting in it was me. Not quite. It looked like me, but thinner, paler. Its eyes too wide, its smile stretched too long. It leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at me with hunger. "You lasted longer than most," it said in my voice. My throat closed. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. The thing chuckled. "You thought rules would save you? Carla thought so too." "Carla." My chest tightened. "Where is she?" I forced out. My voice cracked, weak. The thing tilted its head. Gone. Or maybe here. Hard to tell the difference anymore. I staggered back. My heel hit nothing. Just air. The room didn't end, but the floor did. Behind me was a drop. Endless, black, yawning wide like a mouth. The thing grinned. "You can fall, or you can feed." The word echoed, feed. The same word the wrong ones whispered over and over like worship. I shook my head. No. The thing laughed, hollow and sharp. "You already have. Every night you worked, you gave us a little more. Your fear, your breath, your hours. You know how long you've been here?" I opened my mouth to say a month, but the word died because I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember finals or breaks or even the last time I'd been outside in daylight. My memories tangled, looping, bleeding into each other. The thing stood. Its movements mirrored mine perfectly. "You're hollow," it said. "Almost ready." It stepped closer. I backed toward the void. My hands shook. My heart slammed against my ribs. "I'm not like you." Its grin widened. "You are. Look." And then the walls rippled. Every surface turned reflective. And in every reflection, I wasn't me. I was them. Pale, smooth, eyes like holes, sitting in booths, whispering. My stomach twisted. My knees buckled. "No," I whispered. "Yes," the thing said gently, almost lovingly. "Rules don't keep you safe. Rules make you one of us." Step by step, obedience carves you into shape. It touched my arm. Its hand was warm, too warm. My skin burned where it pressed. "Stop fighting," it whispered. "You'll feel better once you stop pretending you're not hungry too." I shoved it back, hard. It stumbled, surprised, but still smiling. I ran. The floor stretched forever, but I ran until my lungs tore, until my legs gave out, until I couldn't hear my own footsteps anymore. And when I collapsed, gasping, the chair was waiting. And the thing was already sitting in it again. Closer this time. "You can't leave," it said softly. This is the only place now. The void roared behind me. The thing leaned forward, grinning wider, wider, until its mouth split, stretching ear to ear, teeth endless, throat bottomless. Choose, fall, or feed. I woke up again, in my dorm. Morning light cut through the blinds. Birds sang outside. My phone buzzed with a text from a classmate about a group project. Normal. Perfectly normal. Except my apron was hanging on the back of the chair, and in the pocket, the knife. Frost still clung to the blade. And in the corner of the room, sitting in the shadows, was a booth chair, occupied. I didn't look too long. I didn't need to. Because I already knew the rules. And now, I think I finally understand them. They weren't meant to protect me. They were meant to teach me how to behave, how to fit in, how to last long enough to become one of them. That was 3 days ago. I haven't been back to the cafeteria. Haven't seen Carla. Haven't told anyone. But I don't think it matters. Because every night, I hear the knocking again. Not under the tiles this time, under my bed. And last night, when I whispered the rules out loud just to make it stop, the knocking answered back in my own voice. You ever see anything weird on those cameras? She didn't answer. Just gave me this tired, flat look, like I'd asked a question I wasn't supposed to. Then she turned away and kept counting cash. That silence scared me more than if she'd laughed. I don't think I've told you the worst part yet. The part that kept me from quitting, even when I wanted to. It's the way they look at me. Not always, not every night, but sometimes, when the cafeteria is nearly empty and the clock is pushing 2 a.m., one of them will turn, slowly, deliberately. Their featureless faces will tilt in my direction, and even though there are no eyes, no expression, I can feel it. They're watching me. And the longer I worked there, the more I realized something terrifying. They weren't just coming in to sit. They weren't just blending with the students. They were waiting. For what? I still don't know. But I think I was part of it. I think I still am. You probably want me to tell you what happened the night everything broke open. I will. But you have to understand, once I start, there's no unhearing it. Because I wasn't supposed to be there when the doors locked behind them, and I wasn't supposed to see what they really eat.